That morning, I stood in front of the mirror and straightened the collar of my white blouse 3 times. My fingers were trembling. It wasn't simple nerves. It wasn't the kind of anxious energy that fades once you sit down and take a breath. This was something heavier. The kind of feeling that settles into your bones when you really know that this is it. This is the last door. 26 years old. 2 years of job hunting. 32 applications sent out into the world. Most of them disappearing into silence. 11 had passed the initial screening. 3 had made it to a final interview. And today was the 3rd. But this company, Whitfield Group, was in a different league from the others entirely. One of the top 10 corporations in the country. The kind of place where people built careers that lasted decades. Benefits, salary, stability, a future you could actually plan around. Everything I had spent 2 years working toward was gathered in one place. Behind one set of doors. But if I'm being honest with myself, there was a reason more desperate than career ambitions or financial security. Mom. Her knees had been giving her trouble for months. She couldn't stand for long stretches without the pain showing in her face, even when she tried to hide it. And yet, despite all of that, she still hadn't quit her overnight shift at the convenience store. Every time I brought it up, she changed the subject. Every time I asked her to slow down, she smiled and told me she was fine. I knew what that smile meant. It meant she was waiting for me to land somewhere stable, so she could finally rest. I had been carrying that weight alongside my own, and some mornings it was the heavier of the two. I ate a piece of toast standing at the kitchen counter, barely tasting it. Checked my bag twice, resumed copies, portfolio, pen. Locked the door and stood in the hallway a moment before heading down. I transferred twice on the subway. 40 minutes of watching the city pass in and out of darkness. I went over my answers the way I had every night that week. Motivation for applying. Greatest strength. A challenge overcome. The words had been rehearsed so many times. They stopped feeling like language and started feeling like breath, automatic, necessary. When I finally stood in front of the Whitfield Group building and looked up, the glass exterior was catching the morning light, blazing brilliant and cold against a pale sky. For a moment I just stood there on the sidewalk, with people streaming past me on either side. Something in my chest was very still. Inside those walls, my life could change. I turned that thought over once, let myself feel it, then put it somewhere quiet and walked through the doors. The lobby was all marble and muted light. A receptionist guided me to the elevator without ceremony. 20th floor. My hand was cold when I pressed the button. The doors slid shut, and in the mirrored panel I caught a glimpse of myself. Pressed blouse, hair pulled back, the face of someone trying very hard to look like she belonged somewhere she had never been before. The numbers climbed. I closed my eyes and said it quietly, just to myself. You can do this. You prepared for this. You're ready. The doors opened. The hallway was quiet in a way that felt deliberate. Thick carpet absorbed every footstep. Along the walls, framed black and white photographs traced the company's history, groundbreakings, handshakes, ribbon cuttings, decades of growth captured in still images. I found the waiting area and sat down, folding my hands in my lap. 2 other candidates were already there. A man in a sharply pressed suit sat reading something on his phone, his expression composed. A woman across from him was staring at the floor, lips moving slightly, rehearsing, I guessed, the same way I had been on the subway. We didn't speak. We all understood exactly what this room was. The minutes passed slowly. Candidate number 3, So-Yeon Lee. I stood. My heart had climbed somewhere near my throat. I followed a staff member down the hallway to a closed door, where she stopped and gave me a small nod. I knocked. Come in. I pushed the door open and stopped. 3 interviewers sat behind a long table. The 2 on either side appeared to be executives in their 40s, faces composed, posture formal, folders open in front of them. Standard. Expected. But the person sitting in the center was different. She was a woman who looked to be in her 70s. Her white hair was pulled neatly back from her face. She wore a deep charcoal blazer, and the way she sat perfectly still, hands resting quietly on the table, gave the impression of someone for whom stillness was not a choice but a nature. Her eyes were sharp and dark and direct. And the moment I crossed the threshold and took my seat, that gaze shifted. Just barely. Something moved through it too quickly for me to name. A tremor. A flicker. Something. I noticed it. I couldn't explain it yet. The interview began. The 2 executives led the questions. Motivation for applying. Core strengths. Where did I see myself in 5 years? I answered carefully, the way I had practiced, measured, specific, calm on the outside. Even as my pulse moved faster than I would have liked. But something was off. The chairwoman in the center said nothing. From the moment the interview began, she simply watched me. Not in the evaluative way of someone tallying answers against a checklist. This was something else entirely. She was studying me the way a person studies something they are trying to place. Something familiar that they can't quite locate in memory. When the executives seemed to be nearing the end of their questions, the chairwoman finally spoke. So Ian. Her voice was low, unhurried, and with just that one word, just my name, the temperature of the room seemed to change. Yes. Please go ahead. Where are you from? Unexpected, but I kept my composure. Jinju, South Gyeongsang Province. The slightest shift in her expression. So brief I might have imagined it. And your parents? I live with my mother. Just the 2 of us. Your father? He passed away when I was young. A pause. She looked down at my resume, then back up at me. May I ask, what is your mother's name? The room went still. The 2 executives glanced at each other uncertainly. I felt the same disorientation. There was no context in which this question belonged in a final job interview. No protocol that called for it. No logical reason a chairwoman would need to know a candidate's mother's name. And yet her expression was utterly serious. This was not a tactic. Whatever this was, it was real. Her name is Myung-hee Lee, I said quietly. That was the moment everything changed. The chairwoman's hand went still on the table. The pen she had been resting her fingers against rolled slowly to the edge. And dropped to the floor. The sound was small and sharp in the silence. No one moved to pick it up. She lifted her eyes to mine very slowly. And something rose in them that I had no name for. Something vast and compressed and old. The way pressure builds behind something that has been sealed for too long. Myung-hee, she said softly. Then again, Myung-hee Lee. The way she said it was unlike anything I had heard before. Not the way someone confirms a fact. Not the way someone retrieves a memory. It was the way a person sounds when they finally allow themselves to say out loud a name they have carried in silence for years and years. A strange tightness moved through my chest. My palms were cold. Something in me had gone very still. And very alert, and it had nothing to do with the interview anymore. The chairwoman rose from her chair. The executives straightened, unsure. She silenced them with a single look, not unkind, but absolute, and reached into the inside pocket of her blazer. She produced a photograph. It was old, folded once down the center, the crease worn soft with repetition. The edges had rounded slightly, the way paper does when it has been carried close to the body for a very long time. Tucked in a pocket, pressed between pages, held near the heart. She opened it carefully and set it on the table. Then, with just her fingertips, she slid it slowly across toward me. Do you recognize anyone in this photograph? I reached out and picked it up. It was faded nearly to grayscale. The background showed a small yard, a flower garden in bloom. A wooden gate, the corner of a tiled roof. 3 figures stood together in the frame. In the center, a young woman held an infant bundled in a cloth wrap. On either side of her stood an older couple, a man with a straight, composed bearing, and a woman whose face I found myself studying for a long, quiet moment. Then I looked at the young woman holding the baby. The breath left my body. It was my mother. Younger, her hair long and loose, her face open, in a way I had rarely seen in all my life. But it was her, every line of her face, unmistakable. And the infant she was holding. I brought the photo closer. Just below the baby's left ear, a small dark mark. A birthmark. Without thinking, I raised my left hand and pressed 2 fingers to the same spot on my own neck. The same mark. It had always been there. I had never once wondered where it came from. Is this baby me? My voice was barely a sound. The chairwoman did not answer. Instead, for the first time since I had walked through that door, a single tear moved slowly down her cheek. The story continues in part 2. If you'd like to stay with us for the rest of So Yeon's journey, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Thank you for listening.